Hey, welcome to Leadership Is Podcast. I'm here to talk to you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone. And you actually can get your podcast distributed through many platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast. So if you would like to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm.com, you can do so today and get started with your podcast. And remember, leadership is influence and service.
If you explore these three choices. And when we talk about the power of permission, and I just did a masterclass about this, I think it's been a week or so ago. And I talked about the notion of power of permission, not being this antiquated idea of permission that you're having power over, but really the power of permission about being sharing and building power together and understanding when we put power and permission together, we're not supposed to grapple with it. We're supposed to redefine it. And permission is about the conversations that you have with yourself.
Greetings, leaders. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, episode 37, Choosing Purposeful Alignment with Tracey Green Washington, president of Indigo Innovation Group. Whether you realize it or not, in this moment, you are called into something bigger than yourself that requires the creation of intentional purpose and alignment. As a leader, will you answer the call? Let's talk about that today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep, absolutely. So before we get going, I would like to introduce my audience to Ms. Tracey Green Washington. Is the president of Indigo Innovation Group, a consulting firm dedicated to serving as a thought partner, advisor, and consultant to philanthropic and nonprofit organizations that are committed to accelerating change through system-level approaches, equity, and strategic collaboration. In addition, she is the author of the #1 international bestseller, Choosing Purposeful Alignment, The Messy Middle of Transformation. Welcome, Tracey.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited about having this conversation with you this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for honoring us with your time and your talent. And we plan to explore both with you. So tell us a little something about yourself. Who is Tracey Green Washington?
It's so funny that you asked me that question. When people do ask me that question, I can't help but I always start with where I'm from. Yes, so I would say that I'm a native of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm the daughter of Yvette and Lonnie Jives. I come from a long line of individuals who want to do something impactful in community. And I would say that Tracey is someone who wants everyone to win, that's naturally curious, and is not and is committed to asking the hard questions.
Very good, very good. Yeah, I know. I don't think I've ever seen your father, but I definitely know your mother, and she herself, Ms. Jives, is a warrior as it relates to the ovarian cancer fight.
Yes.
For citizens. And so thank you both. And then thank your father for, being your father, you know what I mean? Because you couldn't be you without both. So thank you very much. And thank them very much for your presence.
Thank you. Thank you. I often say that I am definitely my father's daughter, but I'm definitely my mother's daughter. And so, as you say, you've met my mom. And so I would say my dad is more on the quiet side in terms of these issues, but very bright in terms of his personality. And then I would say on the other side, my mom is like this quiet storm, this tsunami, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That is very much about asking hard questions, pushing, but in a way that's from a place of grace. So I think I have a balance of the tsunami and the colorful brightness. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. Yep, I would agree. So, looking at this beautiful book that you have written, this number one international bestseller, Choosing Purposeful Alignment, The Messy Middle of Transformation. I mean, this is a wonderful book, and it's a it's a book of personal journey and how that journey can help other people on their journey. You know, especially with the learning that, okay, is this my moment? Kind of deals
Mhm.
around throughout this book here. So, why did you actually write this book?
Yeah. Thank you for that, saying that it's about, this moment. Before I talk about like why did I write the book,
Yes, ma'am.
just want to say a couple of words about just emphasizing what you said about what the book was and what it wasn't. It's
Yes,
definitely about this approach of this journey, but the allowing the reader, anyone who picked up the pages, to really examine if this is their moment to move forward, and not only if this is their moment, the book affirming that it is, right? And
ma'am.
taking you through this process of really being able, in a very simple way, of examining that for yourself, while at the same time offering up examples where myself was struggling or moved through some portion of the process or a choice towards arriving to where I finally did move into purposeful alignment. And
Mm,
so when I think about what inspired the book, I think it's the same thing relative to what the book is designed to do. When I think of the inspiration behind it really was birthed out of this tension of knowing exactly where my work was, right? And
right.
this tension of being in a place or space and relationships and institutions, or having to make a choice about those places that don't necessarily align or allow me to be able to do the work that I was called to do. And really having to make a decision about, am I going to be still, or am I going to make some really critical choice points? And when I say choice points, these small choices that impact or compounded to have this large impact towards getting to and being positioned exactly where I'm supposed to do to have the type of impact that I desire to have, and also knowing that there's a difference between being successful and moving towards doing significant legacy building work.
Mm.
And understanding that in order to do that work, it's a non-negotiable regarding some of the choices that I was going to have to make to be able to move into that space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that takes a lot of that takes courage. What I mean now, just to give you a heads up, every now and again when I interview guests, I kind of stray off script. In other words, and the reason for being is because sometimes a person's answer can be so profound that I have to ask them to kind of expound on that answer a little more. And let's go down. Let's see how deep that rabbit hole actually goes as it relates to their answer. So this being one of those times, So tell us more about what it took, for you to actually do that internal search, and in order for you to really embrace that idea.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, and it's funny that you used the word courage because I've heard that from different individuals about this journey that I undertook, and I never saw myself as courageous. I just knew that it was a difference between surviving and thriving, and that I
Mm,
had to make those decisions to really honor my elders and individuals that had poured into me. And by not listening and not moving, that I was being disobedient, and not
mm,
honoring the gifts they had imparted to me, as well as the time that they put into me, right?
yes.
And so as I think about your question relative to the journey itself, and repeat it one more time in terms of the courage And what was the other part, Jason, that you really
Yeah,
want?
it was really, what was the courage that it took for you
Mm,
to really embrace that idea of moving forward on your moment.
hmm
What yeah. So what did it really take for you
Yeah,
to really do that? Go beyond the courage.
yeah.
You know what I mean. And so what was it that drove that whole idea of embracing and taking charge of the moment?
The reality is it didn't happen in a moment. It was very incremental. So number one, understanding that was incremental process for me to even um, uh, lean into that moment where I actually had to make the decision. And that
Mm,
moment was a result of many moments of noticing and paying attention to signals and signs that I was unwilling to pay attention to before. It
mm,
was a process of giving myself permission to create intentional space and to even question those signals and signs and to question whether it was okay for me to center myself in the conversation when so much work needed to happen in community. And what I
mm.
had to come to, and eventually I understood that by centering myself and centering purposeful alignment in my work, in my life, in my walk, that it actually was the impetus and the medicine that I needed to be able to really be courageous, I think, in terms of making the final decision to be able to transition out. And the reality is, I also needed and was very blessed to have so many people around me that were willing to ask me hard questions, willing to listen, but not tell me what to do, but were willing to impart their own wisdom, allowing the necessary, what I like to say, gumbo, for me to
Yeah.
be able to come to this place, to be able to examine what purposeful alignment meant to me and what could be possible, even if I just even explored if I even explored what yes to that proposition could look like. And for me, I knew very clearly that when I think about systems work, I think about systems work in three ways. You're either working within the system to make it better, you're working on the fringes of the system to push the system to be better, or you're working completely outside of it to innovate the system, right? And you're
Mm,
creating new models and tools that can be introduced to the system as a normal way of doing the work. And so I knew
mm.
for myself, I had worked in the system and I had done the work that I was called to do. And I wanted to work on the fringes of the system and pushing the system and helping leaders be more bold and audacious and supporting them in those spaces. And I also wanted to continue the work that I had been doing through CodeThink and other ventures to innovate and create new models that could push the system as well.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So before we go to the next question, I want to, again, stray off a little bit and ask you, because you're also the founder of CodeThink. What is the idea behind CodeThink?
Yeah. So CodeThink emerged out of seeing all this amazing work that was bubbling up in Asheville and Western North Carolina 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, that was led by African American and Latinx leaders that were just being bold and audacious and knocking down doors and kicking down
Mm,
doors and being unapologetic about the solutions, the strategies that they knew would move our communities forward. And so CodeThink was birthed out of being inspired by those individuals and those groups, and through a collective consensus building with those groups and those leaders in community to figure out how we could collectively use our time, talent, and treasure towards impacting and amplifying the efforts that they were doing, as well as seeding other efforts that we knew would be needed for the future. And so even the idea of co-thinking itself is birthed out of this collaborative, collective understanding of the power of networks, and networks being about not having power over, but building and sharing power together, and even transferring power to individuals who have
mm-hmm.
these lived experience and have the best ideas about how to solve really complex social change in our communities, and figuring out how we can collectively support through grant making, access to resources, through healing together, through systems change and also really strategic capacity building that was done in a countercultural way that honored individuals and saw them as the experts that they were, and supported them as a partner in the way that felt just right for them.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. And that's leadership. It takes leadership. It takes vision, in order to bring that idea forward and then to connect with, people that'll help you to explore that idea.
And I didn't do it by myself. This is a collective effort.
Yeah.
So I always like to say that
Yeah.
it was a collective effort, and it continues to be a collective effort.
Yes, ma'am. Very good. Thank you so much. So going back to your book, Choosing Purposeful Alignment, The Messy Middle of Transformation, you give in this book 3 choices. So what are the 3 choices, and why only 3?
Yeah, I have to say that the 3 choices are the power of permission, leaning into transformation, and becoming a game changer. And for me, first of all, I would say the 3 choices, I think, is indicative of how I do my work. When people think about working with me in so many different capacities, I try to make big small, and I try to make complex simple. And the reality is, if we want to do work with people and we want to engage in journeys that are really hard like this, we don't have to make them complicated. When we are making work complicated, when we're making spaces complicated, it is something I think for me is not honoring individuals that are doing this really hard work, right? And so for me, the 3 choices emerged out of wanting to be really succinct and clear about what this path looked like, right? Not making it complicated. And they really emerged out and were birthed out of the experiences that I talk about in the book.
Yeah, that's some good stuff there, man. So your book, I've heard some and seen some reviews about your book. There's been words used like healing, of course, transformational, powerful, and game changer. You know what I mean? So very good. Thank you. So what is the meaning of the 3 different principles that are attached to your, choosing purposeful alignment?
What's underneath all 3 of the choices is an invitation. It is a proposition. And that's how I start the book out, that this is a proposition for you to explore what could be possible if you explore these 3 choices. And when we talk about the power of permission, and I just did a masterclass about this, I think it's been a week or so ago. And I talked about the notion of power of permission not being this antiquated idea of permission that you're having power over, but really the power of permission about being sharing and building power together, and understanding when we put power and permission together, we're not supposed to grapple with it. We're supposed to redefine it. And permission is about the conversations that you have with yourself. Permission is about giving yourself permission to notice things as they really are, and grapple with that and what impact it is having on you, and think about what vision you want for your life and your community and your work going forward. Permission is about exploring what could a yes possibly look like, your first yes, to even explore what this could be if you did your work differently, if you moved yourself into different spaces differently, if you had different relationships, if you thought about your role in change or transformational work in a different way, what would that look like? And I think the last one about permission that I really talk about is really, what is it going to take to activate yourself in its space? And so that really sets the foundation to move to the next choice around leaning into transformation. And oftentimes people think about transformation as we're saying that something is wrong with you, like that you need to change. But transformation is all about embracing who you are. And I start this part of the work of even talking about the concept of transformation trauma, which is this tension between this idea of what transformation is, which is perceived as positive, or should be perceived as positive, but actually it can be traumatic because it conjures up moments, experiences where we've been in places, spaces, relationships, or have memories where we've had to shift, change, or in places that put pressure on us and did not allow us to show up as our best self, right? And so, so this notion of leaning into transformation is all about positioning your posture to be ready, and whatever that means for you. It is about embracing rest. You know, in our work, oftentimes we don't see rest and respite as liberation, right? And in this part is about embracing that as a non-negotiable, as work that we have to do. It's critical. If you're tired, you can't move work forward, right? Then this idea of what it will take to center yourself and changing your thinking relative to that being selfish, and what kind of space could you have to explore new tools, relationships, or spaces that you never even thought about as you think about how you do your work differently or in a different way, or not even in a different way, be amplified as you move forward. And the last choice is about becoming a game changer. And it's so funny, oftentimes when people think about game changers, about someone who's arrogant and they know everything. And that definitely isn't the way that I talk about it or even see a game changer. And when I think about a game changer, it's someone that knows clearly what their role and responsibility is and the type of impact that they want to have, and are willing to use all their resources at their arsenal to move that forward in a way that's collaborative, that is not extractive, that is honoring self, honoring individuals around them, and really diving deep into their values.
Very good. Wow, that's powerful stuff, Tracey. That's some real powerful stuff. Yeah, that I know that sounds like this thing sounds like it took a lot of years and experience to incubate and finally, grow, and in order for you to be, from the caterpillar to the butterfly, in other words, with this transformational work that you're proposing and inviting us to be a part of, which brings me to another question. So with this book, there's also like a program or an invitation to people to take part of a journey with you in a program as well, right? Okay. Yeah.
What I was hearing over and over as I first was talking about the book, and then when the book was released, is from individuals was this idea of what it would feel like to share collective space with others that were grappling with the same thing. And I was being invited and continue to be invited into these sacred spaces with individuals, men and women of all colors, that are grappling with choosing purposeful alignment and what that means for them, and are bringing other individuals into this conversation and figuring out how they work through the book, how do they wrestle with it together, with the understanding that they also have to balance that with life and distractions and family and things that are happening. And so the program that I developed was birthed out of these conversations of individuals asking for additional space with me, asking for additional time to work through the book, and wanting to figure out how do I create intentional space for them to be able to grapple with it, with the understanding that iron sharpens iron. That when you have people who are thinking about this in a really powerful way, together it could be momentous, right? And so the series is called the Aligned Intensive Series. And the word intensive was selected because it is an intensive process. The book itself is intensive once you get into it. It's very simple, but once you get into the questions and the processes underneath it, it is an intentional journey that requires attention as you move forward. And so the Aligned Intensive kicks off February, I believe it's 16th. So we're about a month away. And it's designed to be a
Okay.
9-month experience for individuals to walk them through the 3 choices, through a series of conversations, through a series of coaching and peer coaching, as well as content delivery about the different areas and homework in between to keep all of us accountable on this journey.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Like really proud of you. I'm happy to know you. I'm honored to know you and seeing the wonderful work that you're actually doing and the influence that you have in our community is just, it's jaw dropping at times. And so thank you for your contribution to the betterment of
No, thank
humanity.
you for allowing me the space to talk about the book, allowing me to invite others into this proposition. I know that doing this work this year is critical. And so I hope that
Yeah.
others will feel compelled to join me on that journey, and they can learn more about the Line Intensive series through visiting my website at indigoinnovationgroup.com, or they can email me directly at Tracey at indigoinnovationgroup.com as well to get additional information.
Very good. So my last and final question is, why is your yes
Oh,
important?
that's a good juicy one. Jason, oftentimes in this work, we don't get too many spaces where we say yes, right? We may say yes
Right.
to work. We may say yes to other people. But I question how often do we say yes to ourselves. And so
Mm,
that's why the yes is so important. The yes is the first step to even considering this proposition and considering what you could amplify, what you could shift, or where you could go deeper in your life or in this work, given where your purpose is. And it has to start with a yes, right? Because without the
that's right.
yes, you can't see what you have to say no to. Oftentimes in
Mm,
my work that I do from a consulting perspective, I share with my clients that if you can't see it, you can't name it. And if you can't name it,
mm,
you can't reimagine it and interrupt it. And so the yes is
mm.
about seeing it better. Because when you say yes to something, oftentimes it is the first time you've even said it out of your mouth, that you haven't whispered about it. Like you put it down on paper, right? And in saying
Yeah.
that, you're giving yourself permission to explore what it could be, to even talk about it with others, to examine what that could mean in your life or the impact that you want to have. And it also causes you to examine your 3 no's. Because the reality is when you say yes to something, you have to say no to something. And that's not a
That's right.
bad thing, because the no's oftentimes are the noise, right? And the distraction. And they're the places that
Yeah.
you have to leave or transition from to move into the place where you're going to walk in your purpose. And so being
Yes,
able to
ma'am.
have the opportunity to say yes gives you the space to be clear about your no's and holding yourself accountable to those no's. And also dealing with the fears underneath that, the celebration underneath it, and also the permission to reimagine what could be possible by saying no to some of these other spaces and relationships and institutions.
Whew, way to go. Yeah, that's a that yeah, that's loaded. That is loaded. Yeah, that's absolutely loaded, sister. So, with closing comments, anything else that you would like to say as it relates to your book, or anything else that you would like to share, and then, of course, share your contact information with us as well.
Yeah,
Once
I
again,
will say that I feel like and hope that my book is a complementary tool for individuals to put in their arsenal for 2021 and beyond. I do believe that this is a powerful year that is compelling and requesting that we all level up and do our work. And I believe that the book can be one tool of many to help you on that journey, as well as the Line series. There was one question that you didn't ask me, Jason, which I thought was a very important one in terms of talking about feedback around the book and talking about and challenging the idea in terms of transformation. And what I will say from
Yeah.
that is it's very important that we have those conversations, because it is about the courageous conversations. Because oftentimes when there's a challenging around the idea that's about doing something different, that's counterculture to what's comfortable to us, I want those things to be lifted up, because then we can interrogate and then we can ask other hard questions. What about that is
Yeah.
creating discomfort? What about that is creating discomfort? And how do we move individuals from this place of discomfort to give themselves permission and a pathway to be able to walk into their purpose and align that in a way that makes sense for them, not for anybody else, but makes sense for them. This journey is very personal. It is unique to everyone. And all we can do is support the space for individuals to work through the messy middle to arrive just where they're supposed to arrive. And for me, that's important. That's the work that I want to do. That's the work I want to support individuals around. And that's the work I'm excited to do, because I know the magic and the impact when you create that space. And I am honored that individuals would trust me with that, and that they would join me in this journey.
Very good. Yes, ma'am. You know what? I can actually see a version of this book developed for students, and and it's being put into schools as conversations. Especially, I'm doing another conference like the one that we did with closing the leadership gap between men and women. I'm doing an educational one in March, closing the leadership gap session 2, and I can see that, with the discussions that I'm actually creating for us to have, how a book like this, choosing purposeful alignment, the messy middle of transformation, and then slash for students or for kids or something like that, coming out of that discussion and being used as a tool for them to transition from, pre, or post COVID-19 era.
That's
So yeah,
interesting. I hadn't thought
yeah,
about it in that context, but definitely I think it could be helpful, because I think there are new things that emerge and continue to emerge as a result of COVID, from transitions to to both challenges as well as opportunities. I will say it's so interesting you talked about students, and I love that you talked about students from a range of students, right? It sounds like for me, from high school on up, or even middle school, etc. I have a dear friend that is a professor at a college, and she actually is going to design, and I'm going to help her design a course for college students this summer that's around the book as well. And so I think that wherever individuals are, I think that this could be helpful as a blueprint or as a pathway to ask questions to lead them exactly where they need to be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Once again, how can people contact
I
you?
look forward to hearing from individuals. I look forward to having more conversations with you. Individuals can contact me by emailing me at Tracey, Tracey, at indigoinnovationgroup.com. Individuals can also sign up for the Aligned Intensive Series by either emailing me or going to the website, which is indigoinnovationgroup.com. Individuals can also reach me through Instagram as well as Twitter. My handle is Ms. Think, as well as engage with me on Facebook if individuals are on Facebook. But I look forward to comments, feedback, ways to continue to have this conversation in a powerful way, and supporting individuals that are ready to move through it this year through our process. I think it's going to be very powerful.
Tracey, once again, thank you so much for your time and your talent. We will be in touch. And thank you so much for sharing this wonderful, phenomenal opportunity.
Well, Jason, thank you for creating the space for this conversation and inviting me into this space. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are you promoting the right people into leadership positions? How do you know? How do you measure the outcomes you're looking for? Please visit www.jmleadershipconsulting.com and request a half-hour consultation so that we can help you with your leadership development needs. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
Greetings, leaders. Thank you for enjoying another episode of Leadership Is Podcast with our special guest today, Miss Tracey Green Washington. We talked about choosing purposeful alignment from her #1 international best-selling book, Choosing Purposeful Alignment, The Messy Middle of Transformation. And 3 things she talked about were the 3 choices that she proposes in her book: the power of permission, leaning into transformation, and becoming a game changer. And so what she says the book is a proposition or an invitation. So I hope that you accept that invitation as I have accepted that invitation and keep moving forward and gaining the power of permission and exploring what it means to have your first yes. I work with emerging leaders, high potential employees, and students to develop and embrace a growth mindset for leadership. If you would like for us to do a presentation, keynote your next event, or for a free half-hour consultation, please contact us at jason@jmleadershipconsult.com or visit my website, www.jmleadershipconsulting.com, or call us at 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. And just to let you know, in the very near future, JM Leadership Consulting will be changing to JM Leadership Development. The website and the email address will change. And so we'll give that information out in a future podcast. Please subscribe to this podcast using the Anchor app or anchor.fm. You can use Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well using Jason A. Muhammad. Please follow us on social media. Twitter is @LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Consulting. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.